Awesome. Welcome back to Home Based Business 101. I'm so excited that all of you are here listening into another episode. I'm Meredith Banka, your host and the founder of the Side Gig Gurus. And right now I'm spending time interviewing all sorts of different women entrepreneurs about how they got into business, why they got into business, sharing their journey with us, and then also bringing some value to all of you in areas that I know are top of mind for us as home-based business owners. So I'm thrilled today to have Laura Pendergast with us of Turtle Returns. She's from Melbourne, Florida, and she's got about 17 plus years, and we're going to hear the details of it, as an expert in doing taxes for small businesses and home-based businesses. So welcome to the show, Laura.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're here, because I was saying as we were getting ready to hit the record button today, I think most entrepreneurs have tax anxiety. I mean, I don't know, maybe most people have tax anxiety. It's such a big topic.
You're right about most people, because I deal with a lot that aren't business owners and they still have very high tax anxiety. So yes.
Well, the rules are always changing. There's always something new. The forms are not the easiest to fill out. You don't want to miss anything. You certainly don't want to find yourself in a position where you're getting a letter from the IRS. So having somebody like you in our, toolbox is always really, really helpful. So before we jump into, your top tips for entrepreneurs and small business owners when it comes to taxes, I'd love to hear your story. So you shared with me you've had your business for 17 years, but you've been doing taxes a lot longer than that. So how'd you get started?
So my parents had a business doing airline catering and private catering. We also had restaurants and all kinds of stuff. So I was in that business for many years before a hurricane and a contract ended, and my choice was to move or to find a new career.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking around and I said, well, I've always been involved with numbers, because in private catering or airline catering, you're always dealing with, again, rules, numbers, safety. It's really all the same. It's just using it in a different way. So you're still being very creative, but you're creative by asking the right questions of that business owner that they might not know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I got into it, is I always had to ask lots of questions anyway. I was always, with airlines, you're constantly reviewing menus and changing menus, and I was involved in every part of it. So it was kind of a normal change for me. But of course, everybody that hears that I'm in taxes is like, how on earth? Food and taxes have nothing in common. Well, this particular part of it does.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like
resolution for about 10 years. So in resolution, you're dealing with people that haven't filed, or they filed but they never paid. So so I've dealt with every part of the tax industry as well. So when business owners or people refer people to me to discuss it, it's like, okay, I've dealt with that.
Mm-hmm.
I can, let's have a conversation. Let's see where you're really at, and bring you back into compliance and get you going in the right direction going forward, because that's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
You get in compliance, then the IRS or the state will work with you. If you're not in compliance, they have no reason to work with you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's so interesting. I think it's so interesting. Sorry to jump in here. I think it's so interesting that sounds to me like you come from a family of entrepreneurs. So you
Correct.
grew up in a household where your parents were self-employed.
Yes.
So having your own business was, not a stretch for you, something that you'd been around, something that you were used to. So you decided to jump in and start Turtle Returns about 17 years ago.
Turtle Returns was a play on words, because I did work with people that were behind. Mm-hmm. So when I first, the bank, the first time I took a deposit in, they're like, what is Turtle Returns? I'm like, taxes. And they're like, taxes? What kind of name is that? I'm like, well, they're behind with taxes, or they're behind with payments. So they're slow. So it kind of, but I also do a lot with the sea turtles. So it's a double.
Oh, nice. Right. Because you're down in Florida. So that connection makes sense. So that's cool that the name and the brand of your business is tied to not only something you love, but also tied to the people that you're helping. That's awesome. That's really cool. So tell me a little bit about what we should all know as entrepreneurs. So what are the most common things that you see when it comes to taxes and when it comes to small business that you can help people with right away?
So I mean, the first step obviously is to pick your name, whether it's a DBA, whether it's an LLC, however you're operating, use that name, separate it from your personal accounts. So the
Mhm.
first thing is to get that business bank account. Like I say, you might be a DBA, it might still be under your name, but use it, because
Mhm.
if you're ever audited or you get that scary letter, if you are using one account, they'll take every deposit made in that account and they'll count that as income on that Schedule C or S Corp or whatever your filing status is, as income, until
Mhm.
you can prove it's not income, because the burden of proof is on the taxpayer.
Mhm.
So the first thing is to separate the bank accounts.
And I think that's a great tip, because a lot of the listeners that we have here, a lot of entrepreneurs, they kind of get started, I think, accidentally. We have a passion, something that we really love. Maybe you make really great cupcakes and you just start providing them, at a function, and people say, "Oh my gosh, Meredith, these are the best cupcakes I've ever had. Wow, I would buy these from you. I would get these from you." I mean, that's how my first business started. I made jewelry for fun. And before I knew it, I was selling it to people. And so because we start accidentally, we don't really think about that business structure. We don't really think about tax filing status, and we don't think about setting up a business account. So is it difficult for someone to walk into a bank and say, "I need a business banking account"?
So, I mean, in Florida, you have to be on SunBiz. And when you go into that bank, you have to have they will look you up to make sure you're a legitimate business.
Mhm.
And then they're going to ask you for that EIN to verify with the IRS as well.
Right,
So and that works in any state in the US.
right.
In other countries, there's other rules, but basically it's the same. You have to set up with some kind of local government, your country government, before you can open a bank account.
So you need to get that business license. You need to have that completed. You need to get an EIN. And, for those that don't know what an EIN is, I think of it as like the social security number of your business. It's a tax
Absolutely.
ID number for your business. And you want to keep that separate in a separate account and have all your deposits and all of your expenses going from that separate account.
And obviously to start, people are like, well, I don't have anything coming in. So you make a loan to that account so that
Mhm.
you're still using that account for your expenses to keep track of and to separate the business from yourself.
Absolutely. And just having that business debit card or those business checks and being able to make sure, even if you have something simple like we're recording today on Zoom, and if you have a Zoom account and it's $12 a month, or if you have a Canva account and it's
Your LinkedIn account, your $99, yes, every part of it, your Microsoft, your QuickBooks, I mean, every bit of it.
Mhm.
Whether they're subscriptions, whether they're a one-time deal, it doesn't matter. It's still a business expense. And that's the part where people get a little confused also. The
Mhm.
business use of phone or the business use of internet, or if they're using a home office. These are all different things that people really don't think of. And all of a sudden they're like, you start asking questions, they're like, oh, well, yeah, I do use that room in my house. Is it only for business? Because that's really where the catch is. Does
Mhm.
it have your kids' toys in it? Because now it's no longer just for business. So,
Right.
and I have had the IRS go to people's houses to check home offices. So people are always
Wow.
like, well, they're never going to check it. I'm like, if you're in enough tax trouble, yes, they will check it.
Mhm. Well, and I think the goal would be to stay out of tax trouble, right? So that's what we would try to do. So when it comes to, getting started, now let's say that we're this brand new business, we've gotten our business license, we've gotten our EIN, we've set up our business banking account, we're keeping track of, whether it's QuickBooks or a spreadsheet or even just our bank statements to get started. We're keeping track of all of our expenses and hopefully all of our income. what are some other things that business owners can do to really make sure that they're prepared when it comes to tax time?
So one of the things that they should never do is prepare their own taxes, because we always will ask more questions. So yes, you can do it on TurboTax. When you get that letter that you didn't include something, that's where the problem comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of asking enough questions and being honest enough to look at everything that you're really doing as, is this income? Is this an expense? Outsource, go get that sale. Do whatever you can to build your sales before that product is ready, because that's the way you build a business.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, as a sales trainer, I always tell people that's the first thing, is to make that sale, to have
Mm-hmm.
that income, to be able to afford the next steps in your business.
Mm-hmm. And how does a business owner know whether they're going to need to file their returns, quarterly, annually, and, what different types of returns should people expect their tax professional to be helping them with?
So, I mean, the first step is, how much income are you actually bringing in? And what is your level of expenses? Because your quarterly estimates, which some people it's monthly estimates because it's easier for them to make monthly payments than quarterly, is based on that bottom line, not that top line. And that's where a lot of people get confused. They're like, oh, I made 100,000. I'm like, 100,000 over how many months?
Mm-hmm.
For your expenses, that 100,000, what really is your bottom line? So, I mean, your first thing, obviously, is a Schedule C. You can't be on payroll. As soon as you jump off of a Schedule C and it's a separate entity, which quite often is not just based on income, but it's based on liability.
Mm.
So if you're in an industry that has a lot of liability, or that you could possibly get in trouble by anything that you do, you separate it immediately. Regardless of whether you're making money or not, you separate it immediately because of that liability.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a lot of people don't understand. So bakeries or anybody in the food business, that's a separate issue, because a foodborne illness can destroy your business immediately, but it can also take your assets if you haven't separated it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the reason behind the EIN, the bank account, keeping it separate from personal.
Mm-hmm.
But see, for a regular business that has no liability, which I don't know what that would be these days, then you should have a bottom line of about 50,000 before you move it, because you have to be on payroll.
Mm-hmm.
Something with liability, like I say, you move it immediately. It doesn't matter whether it's a loss, as long as you have the intent to make money. That's what the IRS asks. It's your intent as to when you move
Mm-hmm.
your personal return.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
like I said, there's different answers.
Mm-hmm.
For your average small business, it's about 50,000. If you're in a liability, high risk, it's immediate.
Do it immediately. Yeah, that's a great tip there. And I also like the concept around, really meet with somebody. This is one of the first things that I always recommend that the clients that I work with outsource, unless of course their business is this, then obviously you can handle it. But there are so many moving parts, and each individual business has a different answer. It's not cookie cutter. And so having somebody to help you walk through this from the very start prevents a lot of, potential problems.
A lot of the later, oh, why didn't I do that?
Mm-hmm.
Because you didn't know any better. Nobody asked you those questions, and no matter where you look on the internet, you can find thousands of questions. Do they fit what you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
At least have a conversation. It doesn't mean that tax professional has to do your return, but have a conversation with them. Make sure that you're comfortable where you're at, and then you make the decision of whether it's worth the money to pay or not. But
Mm-hmm.
9 out of 10 times, it's well worth it, because
Yeah,
we generally
absolutely.
find other things that they never even considered are allowed on a tax return.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Well,
mean, we make our value from day one.
For sure. And, that's another thing that you mentioned that I think is important, not your area of expertise, but one that I think is important for people to recognize is that you do want to insure your business, and you
Correct.
want to insure that business separate from your homeowner's insurance or your personal automobile insurance. And if you're using your vehicle for business, or if you're using your home for business, or whatever assets you have that are insurable, you want to make sure that you're talking also to an insurance professional, because you not only need that liability coverage in the event that you do, make a bagel that, to make someone not feel well, or that your product harms someone, or somebody slips and falls when they come to see you at your house because you're offering massage from your home. All of those things need to be tackled by an insurance professional, and that's a business expense.
Correct.
That
And of course, in our industry, error and omissions, because if that question is asked but not put on the return, we need outside protection as well.
For
But
sure.
that's where the insurance part of my business has come in so handy, because I do a lot of businesses as they're growing. So the first year they might have 50,000, the next year they might have 150, the next year they're over 300. Okay, so where's that break point of, now not only are you on payroll, but now you're paying yourself enough that you can put something away for the future. So that's, it's huge, and it saves so much in taxes.
Yes. And so now at Turtle Returns, you specialize just in taxes, or do you also help people with bookkeeping?
I do not personally do the bookkeeping, except for the ones that literally bring me their bank statements and I have to do the bookkeeping, but I do have a partner that does bookkeeping. And so, yes, it's a full, we do everything.
So help us understand the difference between a tax professional and a bookkeeper or an accountant, because sometimes those services are separate. Sometimes people specialize in both. What's the difference, and why do we need both?
So bookkeepers specifically look at your bank statements, look at your credit cards, separate personal from business, come up with your gross income, come up with your net income, to prepare your financials for a tax professional to take a look at and say, hey, your cost of goods is out of whack compared to industry specific. Are you sure that, and then we start asking questions to have to relook at this stuff sometimes. Other times they fall right in line, or they're less than, and you don't really question it. But that's, so the bookkeepers do up until the tax return. They also generally take care of the quarterlies, the W-2, they do that part of it. We handle it from that point forward. Now, do I do W-2s for clients? Absolutely. Do I do quarterlies for clients? Absolutely. Just had a couple of them pick them up today. But under normal circumstances, I send that to my business partner to handle that part, because that's what she's familiar with. That's where her specialty is. Right. And then she lots of tax questions, and I talk to her clients about taxes. But that's so they're the QuickBooks, the Excel, whatever, just make sure you use some kind of software. And especially now that you can download your bank statements right into the software, that makes it a lot easier than before, where you had to manually put every entry in.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that are just, getting into the financial components of your business, what we're really hearing today is important to have somebody that's helping you with your month-to-month financial management. That's your bookkeeper. What are you making? What are you spending? Are these legitimate, write-offs? Are these things that can be pulled and tied back to your business? Helping you to be prepared for somebody that can actually help you to file those monthly, quarterly, or annual tax returns.
Correct.
So now we've got all of that taken care of. What other things do you see come across your plate that I always like to talk to people who see a lot of different businesses, and they can say, here are the things that I would absolutely do, and here are the things that you should absolutely be avoiding. That's a that's a very category there. So
The things to avoid, for one, is the home office. Like I say, if it's not really a home office, take the standard. I mean, now that there's two different forms of a home office on a personal return, take the little one that they give you with the square feet compared to the amount, rather than doing the percentages of putting in all of your home expenses and
Mhm.
taking a percentage. It's a much safer way of taking a home office. So, I mean, people come to me, oh, my home office is, I'm like, no.
So I'm hearing you say just generally don't overstate the truth.
Correct. Especially in that category. And that goes the same for mileage for your vehicle. Keep that log. Whether it's keep a calendar, do it on your phone, do the mileage IQ or one of them on your phone that keeps track of the mileage compared to business for personal.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah, and those
the
apps are
oil
awesome.
changes. So the one of the best things I ever learned from an auditor is get an oil change in either December or January, because now you have a starting point or an ending point for your mileage for the year. When somebody says, well, how many miles did you drive? I have no idea. But if you had an oil change either at the last week of the year or the first week of the following year, you at least have a starting point for that mileage to try and figure out how many miles you actually drove.
Mhm.
And then I could say the mileage IQ or one of the mileage apps I would highly recommend.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many tools that make
It will
things
put you in
easy.
big trouble.
Yeah, even like with receipts, there are some businesses where maybe you do a lot of coffee meetings, or maybe you meet with a lot of people and you have a lot of, maybe you travel for some reason doing, expos or events or shows for your business. There are even apps now that, you don't want to have a shoebox of receipts that you walk into your bookkeeper with. I literally, yeah, I literally, when I was working in the corporate world, I had a whole team of salespeople that I worked with, and they had to keep track of all their receipts and turn in expense reports. And there was one gentleman that had a box, and when he kept the box in behind the passenger seat of his car, and every time he got gas or every time he got anything, he had a little hole cut in the top of it like a Kleenex box, and he just jammed the receipt in there. And then he would bring it to our accounting department and be like, here's my expenses. And, they're like, no, if you want to get reimbursed for that, you're going to have to go through and prove it to us. Well, now there are apps that you can use where you take picture of the receipt and you can immediately right there categorize it. Of course, you still need to save the receipts for your records.
And mark the back of it with who you met or what the business reason was. The main thing with that is the travel part of it, the hotels. Because any hotel over $75, that's the one funky thing about travel. If the hotel is more than $75, which 90% of the time it is, you have to have that receipt. They don't have to allow travel per se as an expense if you don't have receipts for hotels.
Wow.
And credit cards is a start, but you really need the receipt itself.
Good
So
to
yeah,
know.
take a picture of it, scan it in. I highly suggest scanning receipts because they disappear, but yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cash receipts can add up pretty quickly, and they don't think about them. Oh, I paid cash for it. And that's one of the questions. Where are your receipts? What did you spend? You made this, such and such a money. You had to have expenses. It doesn't just come, especially in the beginning.
Yeah, especially in the beginning, you're going to highly likely have more expense than you have income. And so being able to show that, and like you said, it's okay if you're just starting out and you end up having your business run at a loss.
Absolutely.
That's okay. It very common.
And they're really, absolutely. I mean, for the first 5 years of most businesses, it's minimal, if any, positive, and they expect that. And if it goes longer than that, then yes, it's your intent. As long as you can prove intent, or as long as when they interview you, you say, well, yes, I'm doing this business to make money. That's the question.
Yeah,
They just want to
absolutely.
make sure it's a legitimate business.
Absolutely. So we've learned so much from you today, Laura, about how to make sure that we're, getting ourselves prepared to do our taxes, that we're working with someone, that we're getting things in alignment. Can you think of any other tips or ideas that you always like to make sure to tell those new business owners?
Like I said, keep track of those phones, keep track of that internet, keep track of those hidden expenses in the beginning that you don't necessarily think are expenses. And if that person doing your taxes doesn't bring that up, ask them.
Mhm.
Ask questions, because the more you ask us questions, the more our brains go into overload to ask you specifics of your industry, because every industry is slightly different. Yes, I work in many, many industries. And that's what people are always like, what industry? I'm like, I don't think there's an industry I haven't worked at this point.
Mhm.
And
But I think
therefore referrals all the time, because people are like, well, I'm going to send them to you to set up that EIN, to get the thing started, to get them started in the right direction. Whether they stay with you as a client, that's up to you.
and that's such an important thing, when looking for a tax professional, how do you know that you're finding the right fit? And
You start asking questions,
Mhm.
because it's just like any other business. If I'm not comfortable with you, I don't want to be doing your taxes, because I want you comfortable with my answers. I want you comfortable that I've covered all the bases. And
Mhm.
that's what you need. When I get clients saying they don't ask me any questions, you sit here and you take the full hour of asking questions, and you call me on the phone if I'm missing something. That's the reason we come back to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if somebody does have more questions and they'd like to connect with you, what would be the best way for them to reach out or to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is a good way of finding me. Facebook, I'm I'm in a few groups on Facebook. I don't necessarily look for tax clients off of Facebook, but a lot of them find me that way. So I was with a company for a while, and the business owner died.
Mm.
And in the past year, people have found me from LinkedIn, they found me from Facebook, they found me from Alignable, they've Googled me. They're like, I know where she lives. Now I just have to find her. So
Mhm. Awesome. So finding you on LinkedIn, and we'll make sure to drop all those links into the notes of the show here today on this episode as well. So I just want to thank you for sharing your knowledge. Thank you for, enlightening me. I've learned a few things today too, which is awesome. And I know the people listening in have as well. So thanks for being here with us.
well, thank you, and look forward to any other questions, and have a great day.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.